The knock didn't echo. It sank straight into the wood and stayed there. She didn't move at first, just sat with her boots half unlaced and stared at the door like it might knock again. It didn't. But something pressed behind it. Not the wind, not the dark. She stood up slowly, dragging the hem of her dress like it weighed more tonight. Her hand hovered on the handle, then turned. The boy stood with one foot on the step and one still in the dirt. His coat was too thin. His lips split, half-healed, half bleeding again. A burlap satchel hung from his shoulder, stitched through at the bottom with wire. He didn't blink. She said, "You lost." He didn't answer. "Run off from something?" Still nothing. But his eyes moved to the fireplace behind her, then to her mouth, then back again. She softened. "Are you hungry?" He raised his hand. Just one finger, pointed to the hearth. "Fire?" He nodded once. No voice, just that slow nod. She stepped back. He didn't move until she looked him in the eye and gave a second nod of her own. He stepped in, quiet but not careful, like someone who knew what floors groaned and which ones didn't matter anymore. He sat on the braided rug and didn't speak, just placed his satchel on the floor and held his hands out to the flames like they could forgive him. She shut the door, bolted it. "You deaf?" she asked. He turned to her, didn't answer. She knelt beside him, tapped the floor. "You hear that?" Nothing. He tilted his head, as if sound was something he wanted to pretend he still knew. She tried again. "You understand me?" He nodded once. She said, "But you can't speak." Another nod. "You gonna stay long?" He didn't move. "Where's your people?" He looked down. She sighed. "That's fine." The fire crackled loud in the quiet. It was the only thing making sense anymore. She grabbed the kettle, poured what was left of the tea into a chipped mug, set it near the hearth. He took it with both hands, held it too tight like he expected it to disappear. She sat across from him. "Are you cold?" He nodded. "Name?" He looked at her long, then pulled a bit of charcoal from his pocket, dragged it across the floorboard. "One word." "Thomas," she said. "I'm Ruth." He nodded. "I ain't gonna ask what happened." He met her eyes, like he was used to questions. And worse. She nodded toward the satchel. "You got anything in there worth hiding?" He unbuckled it. I turned it over. One shirt, blood-stained. A spoon, a square of cloth with a broken buckle wrapped inside. That was all. She watched his hands. They were raw at the knuckles like he'd punched stone or cold walls. Or worse. "You've been on the road along." He raised 2 fingers, then 3 more. 5 days. He shook his head. "Weeks?" He nodded. She looked at the fire. "You're lucky it's still burning." He tilted his head. "Some. Nights. I let it go out on purpose." He tapped his chest, then pointed to the fire, then tapped again. She frowned. "Do you need it?" He nodded, then mouthed one word, clear. "Safe." She stared. Something in her jaw shifted. Not pain. Not yet. Just memory coming back too fast. "You think fire keeps people safe?" she asked. He looked at her like that was the only thing he believed. She stood, pulled an old wool blanket from the rocker, and dropped it near his side. "That's all I got." He wrapped it around his shoulders. Tight. She didn't ask what he'd run from. She didn't ask who gave him the bruise on his jaw, or what made his knuckles raw. She didn't ask why he walked 5 weeks to get to a door like hers. Because some questions only dragged the ghosts out faster. She stood behind him, arms crossed, watching the flames more than the boy. Her voice came low. "The last person I let sit there never stood up again." He looked up. She shook her head. Not a threat, just the truth. He shifted a little closer to the fire. She softened. "You're not in trouble." He tilted his head again. "I mean it." He reached for the stick again. Wrote slowly. "I don't dream when it's warm." She stared at the words, then at him. He erased it with the side of his hand. "Hold the heat close again." She whispered, "Me neither." The wind moved outside. The shutters creaked. She walked to the door, checked the lock again, then turned down the lamp. "You can stay. One night." He nodded. She lingered near the table, watching, thinking. His head dropped slightly forward, chin near chest. Not asleep, but past needing permission. She said, "You don't need to ask again." He didn't move. The fire kept burning. She walked to her own chair, sat slowly, boots still unlaced, hands in her lap. "Don't get used to it," she murmured. He didn't hear her. Or maybe he did. and just chose not to answer. In the morning, he was already awake, sitting cross-legged staring at the cold ash like it held secrets. He hadn't moved from the hearth. The blanket was still wrapped around his shoulders, and the satchel sat beside him, unopened since last night. She poured water into a pan, lit the stove. It clicked once, then again. Flame caught. He flinched. "Just the stove," she said. He turned slightly, watching her lips. She pointed to the burner, then flicked her fingers in a loose wave. "Fire," she said again, then mimed eating. "Food." He nodded, stiff, uncertain. She hesitated, then raised her hand and, with some effort, shaped her fingers to form letters in the air. R-U-T-H. He watched, brow low, eyes locked, then repeated it back. Slow, fragile like it might shatter. "Ruth," she said, firmer now. He mouthed it, didn't try to say it out loud, just nodded. "You sign." He shook his head. "I don't either. Not well. I learned a little after—" She stopped. He waited. She didn't continue. He took a stick from the firewood bin, dipped it in the cold ash, and scratched a word across the hearthstone. "Safe?" She stared at it. Not long. Just enough. Then sat down beside him, cross-legged, knees stiff. She wiped the word away with her sleeve. "That depends," she said. He looked at her again. Not like a child. Not like someone needing anything. Just a boy asking a question she hadn't answered in years. She sighed. "I ain't gonna hurt you." His eyes flicked to the iron skillet warming behind her. "You think I'd do it with that?" He shrugged. She grunted. "You've met women who did." He didn't answer, just placed the stick down and rested his palms against the stone again, like it was the only thing that stayed warm. "Are you hungry?" He nodded. She served 2 plates, cornbread, cold beans, and what was left of the peach jam from last summer. "You can eat here, but that's all I got." He waited until she sat, then picked up the bread. "It's a bit slow." Like his mouth remembered pain. She studied his face, the way he didn't blink when the stove hissed, the way he only chewed on one side. "Who broke you?" He looked down. She softened. "Never mind." He tapped the table once. "What?" He picked up the stick again, wrote in tiny letters on the tabletop, careful not to press hard. "Mother first, then the others." She reached for the jam, handed it to him. He smeared it clumsily. "Ate faster. You run from a house or a place." He scratched again. "A man, not a house." She nodded. "That's enough." He paused, then wiped the ash clean with his palm. Sat still again. "You always write like that." He shook his head. "How do you talk?" He pulled the satchel closer, opened it. From the bottom, he took out a leather strip, unrolled it. Inside 5 thin sticks, one longer than the rest. He selected the middle one, sharpened, smooth, tapped it twice. She leaned closer. "You carry your words." He nodded. She ran her fingers over the leather. "Who taught you?" He hesitated, then signed 4 crooked letters. M-A-B-E, maybe? He corrected it. Mabe. "Name?" He nodded. She leaned back. "Is she still alive?" He didn't answer. They sat in silence again. The fire snapped once. She didn't flinch. He didn't either. "Do you have any questions for me?" He tapped once on the table. She said, "What is it?" He wrote again. "Why did you let me in?" She stared at the words, then past them. "I don't know." He watched her. "I didn't know what else to do." She stood, picked up both plates, scraped the crumbs into the stove. The fire flared, then died back down. She rinsed the plates in silence. He rolled the sticks back into the leather and tied it twice. "I guess," she said after a while, "I was tired of being alone." He looked up. She met his eyes. "That's not the same as being kind." He tilted his head. "I'm not kind," she said. "I'm tired." He pointed to the blanket still draped on the floor by the fire, then to himself. She nodded. "That was kindness." "No," she said. "That was a memory." He picked up the stick again. "Of who?" She didn't answer. He scratched again. "Was he kind?" She stared at the question. Finally, she said, "Not at the end." He erased the ash. She stepped toward him. "You want to help around here? You can. If not, stay out of the way." He nodded. "I'll teach you what I can. I can't teach you everything." He nodded again. She reached for his hand. Slowly, I turned it over. Burns. Faded. Some are old, some not. She whispered, "You don't scream, do you?" He shook his head. "Ever." No answer. She let go. You don't need to. He watched her carefully. Not here, she said. He looked toward the door, then back at the fire. She said, This is my house, then added quieter, Was. He mouthed one word, Ours. She looked at him, didn't smile, didn't speak, just picked up the stick and wrote it again. RUTH, then placed it in his hand. His fingers hovered, trembling slightly, then wrote back, THOM. She stared, then nodded once, firm. All right. The wind pushed against the windows, but the house stayed still, and neither of them moved. The screen door slammed before the knock came. No warning, no call ahead, just boot heels across the porch and the weight of someone who never asked. The boy flinched. Ruth didn't. She stood up slowly, wiped her hands on her skirt, and met the shadow halfway. The sheriff didn't wait for permission. He shoved the door open, eyes already moving, badge on his chest, tilted to catch the firelight, gun unbuckled, resting easy on his hip like it had something to say. You got a visitor, he said. She didn't answer. He stepped inside. The heat of the fire pulled the cold off his boots. His gaze dropped to the boy on the rug. That him. She didn't look. You're in my house. I asked you a question. She stepped between them. You don't get to ask. He raised an eyebrow. Funny. I thought I was a sheriff. You're a man in my kitchen. He moved toward the chair by the fire, sat like he owned it. The boy tensed, back still to the wall. The sheriff stretched his legs. Looks like a stray. He's not. Looks like one. Then maybe you need new eyes. He smirked. He can't speak. He can write. Write what? Trouble? He writes his name. That's more than most around here. He leaned forward. You don't even know where he's from. I know where he is. And where's that? Here. He gestured to the boy. He's yours now. She folded her arms. He's mine. The sheriff snorted. You can't even feed yourself, Ruth. Then I'll starve twice. He laughed once, low and bitter. I'm not joking. You were never good at jokes. She didn't blink. You were never good at knocking. The fire popped. Tom didn't move. Eyes locked on the sheriff's belt, the gun, the sharp glint of the badge. The sheriff leaned back. You really think it's safe, letting him in here? I think it's safer than letting you stay. I could take him, right now. No one would stop me. You'd have to go through me. You're not much of a wall. She stepped closer. Try me. He grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. You always did like strays. She said nothing. He looked at Tom again. What did he do? Steal. Hurt someone. He's a boy. They all start that way. She crossed her arms tighter. Why do you care? Because I got questions coming from the next town over. People asking about a boy with busted hands and a broken mouth. You think that's him? I think you found something that wasn't yours. She stepped forward. Nothing in this house is yours either. He tapped the chair arm once. This used to be your husband's chair. I burned his coat in that fireplace. You want the chair too? He stood, slowly, heavy. You're making mistakes, Ruth. Maybe. Big ones. Maybe. He looked down at Tom. He's not yours. She stepped in front of him. He is now. The room went quiet again, the kind that sits in the corners and watches. The sheriff walked to the door, paused. If someone comes looking, I'm sending them here. You already did. He turned, 1 foot on the step. You think a boy like that can save you? No, she said. I think he's the only one not trying to kill me. He stared long. Then I left. The door shut soft. Tom didn't move, just stared at the fire like it was trying to tell him how to breathe. She sat across from him. I didn't speak for a long while. Just let the heat settle again. He picked up his stick, wrote one word, danger. She nodded. He tapped again. Hurt you? She leaned forward. Not yet. He erased the word. You scared? He shrugged. She said, That's fine. You should be. He tapped the floorboard. Why does he hate me? She stared. He doesn't. Tom looked confused. She added, He hates what you remind him of. He waited. Someone weaker than him. He tilted his head. He beat you? She shook her head. Number, but he would have. If I ever let him close enough. Tom nodded once. She whispered, You shouldn't have seen that. He looked at her, then the fire. She added, "But now you know." He signed clumsily. "Yours." She said, "What?" He tried again, then pointed to himself, then to her. "Yours?" She nodded. "Mine." He leaned against the wall, pulled the blanket up, eyes still wide. She picked up the poker, stirred the embers. The fire snapped. "You didn't speak when he was here." Tom looked down. "Are you afraid of him?" He didn't answer. She said, "Good." He looked up. "Fear keeps you alive." He stared at the floor. She added, "But not forever." The flames danced between them. He took his stick again, wrote slowly. "Will he come back?" She said, "Yes." He tapped twice. "Will we be ready?" She didn't speak, didn't promise anything, just pushed the firewood closer and let the flames do the talking. She lit the lantern with hands still shaking from the sheriff's visit. Tom followed her out the back door without a word, bare feet silent on packed earth. The night air was sharp, not cold enough for coats, but mean enough to bite the skin. She pushed the barn door open. The hinges moaned. Inside, dust rose in sheets, untouched in months. Her lantern caught corners and cobwebs and the curve of a saddle tree resting where it had always rested, unfinished, cracked along the seat, and still waiting. She stepped aside. This was his. Tom stood just inside the doorway, hands at his sides. She pointed. He meant to finish it. Before she stopped, he moved forward, slow, careful not to touch anything yet. She said, "He was a good maker, but not always a good man." Tom placed his hand on the saddle tree, fingers spread, palm flat. Then he pulled back, wiped dust from the seat with his sleeve, touched again, softer. She watched. "Have you ever seen one done right?" He didn't nod, didn't shake his head either, just pulled his satchel forward, rummaged through it, and came up with a coil of leather cord, brittle but intact. She narrowed her eyes. "Where'd you get that?" He didn't answer, just pulled the saddle closer to the workbench. "You know what you're doing." He rolled his sleeves up, sat on the stool, placed the cord beside him. His fingers ran along the seat, found the notches, the stretch marks where the tooling had started and stopped. He turned the saddle slightly, adjusted it. Ruth stepped closer. "You really—" He grabbed a square of rawhide from the bin under the table. His hands worked fast, quiet, looping, threading, pulling tight. No hesitation. She stood at the edge of the lantern light, watching. "You stitched before." He nodded once. "Where?" He didn't look up. "Who taught you?" He paused, lifted a finger, traced a name in the dust on the bench. "Mabe." She read it. "Same woman who taught you to sign." He nodded again. She whispered. "She must have been something." His hands didn't stop. Leather creaked, cord pulled clean. It was the sound of work that remembered itself. She stepped closer. "He started that seat a year before he died. Couldn't get it right." Tom twisted the leather strip once, set the groove, stitched again. She said he never used a guide. "I thought it was cheating." Tom paused, then ran his finger down the line he'd just made. "Perfect spacing." "You don't need one either," she muttered. He worked until the lantern burned low. Ruth finally said, "That's enough." He wiped his hands on his trousers, blistered, split at the knuckles. She handed him a rag. "Wrap them." He took it. Didn't thank her. "I didn't need to." They stood over the saddle. "Half the seat now stitched. The rest is waiting." She whispered, "He never finished anything." Tom looked at her. "I mean it," she said. "Saddles, fences, promises." He raised an eyebrow. I almost smiled. She said, "You think I'm bitter?" He reached into his satchel again, pulled out a scrap of canvas, wrote on it with a short piece of coal. "You're honest." She held it. I folded it once, tucked it into her pocket without a word. Then she turned to the saddle, touched the smooth line of Tom's work. "It's cleaner than his." He stared at her, unsure. She said, "That's not praise." "That's a fact." He nodded. She whispered, "He'd hate that." Tom shrugged. "He'd call it luck." He pointed to the saddle. "Work." "Exactly." The barn fell quiet, just the settling of wood, the hum of something old coming back alive. She asked, "You want to finish it?" He signed, slow but clear. "Yes." "I don't have the tools he had." He lifted one from the bench. She smirked. "Of course you do." He placed it beside the saddle like it belonged there. You finish it, she said. It's yours. He looked up, eyes wide. She repeated, It's yours. Then turned. I walked to the door. He stayed behind. Sat in the stool again. Quiet. When she looked back, he was already threading the next line. The saddle didn't creak anymore. It breathed. The scream didn't come with sound, just the crash of limbs, the snap of a tin cup kicked across the floor. She woke up hard, heart pounding, feet already on the ground before she knew why. He was on the floor, back arched, arms flailing, teeth clenched. No voice came out, but the panic was louder than any cry. Tom. He didn't hear her. Tom, it's me. She dropped to her knees beside him, grabbed his wrist. He jerked hard, almost caught her in the jaw. It's me, she said again, pulling his face toward the firelight. You're not there. You're not there. His eyes darted. Wild. Gone. She cupped his cheek. Wake up, baby. Come back. He gasped, finally, body going stiff. Then he curled forward like his chest had caved in. His hands clawed at the floor. She held him tighter. What did they do to you? He reached blindly, knocked over the tin where she kept the stove coal. A lump rolled across the floor. He grabbed it, scraped it across the wood in jagged strokes. Burn. She stared at the word. The letters were crooked, torn in. He looked up at her, still shaking. She didn't ask anything else. She wiped the word away with her sleeve, held him against her chest. You're not there now, she whispered. You're here. He clung to her shirt, face buried, breath sharp, like it was cutting back out of him piece by piece. She rocked slightly. It's over. He signed number. She stopped. I looked down. Not over. He shook his head. Still happening. He nodded. She swallowed. Inside or out? He didn't answer. She whispered, Both? He nodded once, slow. The wire snapped, and he flinched again. She pulled the blanket down from the table and wrapped it around his shoulders. You don't have to tell me, but I'm not leaving. He picked up the coal again. Wrote smaller this time. They made me watch. Her face broke. Not from shock, from understanding. She whispered, How old? He held up 4 fingers. She blinked hard. You've been running a long time. He nodded. She stared into the flames. I thought fire was the worst thing. He tapped her arm. It's not. No? He wrote again. Waiting for it is worse. She covered the words with her hand. The floor was cold beneath them. The night still had hours left. She said, You want to move back to the fire? He didn't answer. I'll be there with you. He stood, slow, blanket dragging behind, sat with his back to the hearth. She joined him. He picked at the coal pieces with one hand, not writing, just breaking them smaller, like he had to hold something to keep still. She finally said, They burned someone else? He nodded. She whispered, And made you sit through it. He didn't move. She reached over, gripped his hand. They can't touch you here. He stared at her. I swear it. He shook his head once. You don't believe me? He didn't answer. Don't need to. She muttered. They sat in silence. The room is heavy, floor scattered with ash and broken words. He wrote again. How do you forget? She looked at him, then away. You don't, she said. He waited. She added, But you learn how to keep living next to it. He blinked. Next to the fire, she almost smiled. Exactly. He signed again. I still feel it. Even now. She leaned back, letting her head rest on the wood. I still hear him, she said. Tom looked over. She nodded. Every time that door creaks, every time I find something of his in a drawer. He tapped. Your husband, she nodded. He's been gone for 3 years, but some nights I still hear his boots on the porch. Tom watched her hands. She added, But he doesn't get to come in. He wrote, Do mine still get in? She read it, then whispered, Only when the fire's low. He picked up a coal piece, broke it into dust. She stood, tossed another log on. The flame rose, brighter now. Shadows pulled back. He stared into it, face lit sharp at the edges. Better? She asked. He signed yes. She knelt again. You sleep here tonight. He hesitated. You sure? You'll sleep better near it. He tapped once. You. I don't sleep much. He looked at her hands, folded tight. She added, I'll be close. He nodded, settled back into the blanket. She stood at the edge of the rug, watching the fire eat its way through the wood. He mouthed a final word. Thanks. She didn't reply. I didn't need to. Just watched until the ashes stopped moving. Before the sun even touched the field, he was already standing outside. Barefoot again, staring past the barn toward the tree line. She stepped onto the porch, wrapping a shawl tight around her shoulders. You sleep? He shook his head. Bad again? He didn't answer, just turned, gestured once, beckoning. You want me to follow? He nodded. She grunted, pulled her boots on. It's too early for ghosts. He waited at the gate, didn't move until she caught up. Where are we going? He pointed ahead, then signed a crooked letter W, held his hand like a cup, pointed down. The well? He nodded. She frowned. It's dry. He raised his hands again. Voices. She slowed. Voices from where? He tapped his ear, then his chest. I felt them, not heard. They passed the fence line, the pasture rough from frost and wear. Her husband had meant to repair it once. Like everything else, the well sat where it always had, stone-lined, covered with a rotted plank and rusted handle. Nothing had been drawn from it in years. Nothing that lived. He knelt beside it, touched the stones, closed his eyes. She kept taking a step back. You think someone's down there? He looked up, pointed down, then signed. Not someone. Something. She exhaled sharply. Are you trying to scare me? He shook his head. She stepped closer, cautious. The stones were slick with moss. The handle creaked when she touched it. The cover slid just enough to peer in. Blackness. No sound. Just the deep kind of dark that swallows noise before it rises. She whispered, Nothing. He motioned again. Wait. They stood still. The kind of still where time bends. Then drip. Far below. Then again. Drip. Like a clock buried in stone. She leaned a little more, held her breath. Nothing. Then a sound scraped, software barely there, like metal dragging over wet rock. She stiffened. Did you hear? He nodded fast, face pale. Chains, she said. He signed, hands fast now. Every morning. Before light. Then it stops. Why didn't you tell me? He hesitated, then wrote on the frost with his fingertip. I didn't know if it was mine. She stared at him. Your memory? He nodded. But I heard it too. He stepped back, uneasy. She dropped the cover back in place. No one's been down there in years. He looked at her. Then the stones. She added, That doesn't mean no one's still there. The wind shifted. Leaves rustled behind them, but nothing moved. He tapped her arm, pointed to the well. He used to go there? She blinked. Who? He tapped the side of his leg, limped for a second, then pointed again. My husband. Tom nodded. He said he was checking the pump. She stared at the stones, said there was something wrong with the pipes, that it made noises. Tom signed. It wasn't the pipes. She nodded. No. His hand trembled slightly as he wrote next. Did he pull something out or push something in? She didn't answer. He stepped close, gripped her wrist, firm but not rough. She whispered, I don't know. He pointed at the well again. Why does it stop at light? She said, Same reason you didn't want to sleep in the dark. He mouthed one word, fear. No, she said. Shame. He stared at her. Dark hides things, but it remembers them too. He backed away, eyes on the well. She reached out, took his hand before he moved too far. Don't run from it. He hesitated. She pulled his hand gently. Come on. They walked back slower. He stopped once, turned around. She asked, What is it? He tapped his chest. I felt it move. In here. She didn't question it, just nodded. Back in the yard, he washed his hands in the basin. Didn't speak. She placed a kettle on the stove, watched it come to boil. Chains, she said. What kind? He signed a circle. Big, dragging, like pulling weight. Could have been animals. He shook his head. She poured the water. Something you recognize? He nodded. From before, he didn't move, or always. He looked at her, slowly wrote, both. She swallowed, sat down hard on the chair. He knelt by the fire again. She watched him. You think it's a memory? He didn't answer. She said, or a warning. He signed, both. She whispered, You said that already. He gave a tired shrug. She added, Maybe they know more than we do. He looked at her, eyes hollow, then signed, It remembers. They heard the hooves before they saw the men. 4 riders, slow but certain, each one heavier than the next. The sheriff didn't knock this time. He stayed in the saddle, chewing something dark and wet, the spit ready on his tongue. Ruth stepped out with her hands still damp from dishwater. Tom stood behind the door, one eye barely visible through the crack. The sheriff leaned forward. "Morning, widow." She said nothing. He looked over her shoulder. "Is he still here?" "You know he is." He grinned. "Thought maybe he'd burn the place down by now." Her voice came flat. "He sleeps by the fire. Don't feed it." The men behind him chuckled. One of them spat. The sheriff's boots creaked in the stirrups. "Hand him over." "No." "You sure?" She nodded. He chewed. Slowly. "Deaf boys don't last." She stepped forward. "Then neither will you." The laughter stopped. One of the men spoke up. "Are you threatening an officer?" She didn't take her eyes off the sheriff. "I'm telling a man to back off my porch." The sheriff raised his eyebrows. "You've grown teeth." "I've had 'em. Just didn't need to use 'em on a man too scared to bite first." He leaned back in the saddle. "He's dangerous." "So am I." "Where'd he come from?" "Someplace worse." "You even know what he is?" "I know who he's not." The sheriff motioned with 2 fingers. One of the riders stepped forward, horse close enough to kick the porch beam. Ruth didn't flinch. "You make a move toward him, I swear to God." The sheriff interrupted. "Ain't nobody moving. Yet." She crossed her arms. "Then say what you came to say." He gestured toward the door. "He can't hear me. You tell him." "No." "You want him taken in at night? In cuffs? You want to see what happens if you try?" The man closest spat again. "She's got guts." The sheriff smiled. "Or a death wish." Ruth's voice dropped. "I've already died once." The silence hit hard. Tom pushed the door open just enough to step outside, blanket still wrapped around his shoulders, coal dust smudged on his fingertips. He didn't look scared. Not anymore. The sheriff looked him over. "You understand what's happening here?" Tom didn't move. Ruth stepped beside him. "He understands more than any of you ever will." One of the riders laughed. "Does he understand a noose?" Tom's eyes snapped to the man. Held there. The laughter faded. Ruth spoke coldly. "He's mine." The sheriff chewed again, eyes fixed on Tom. Then, calm as windless smoke, he said, "People like him don't stay quiet forever." Ruth answered, "Then maybe someone should have listened sooner." The sheriff spit into the dirt. "Suit yourself." He pulled his reins. The horse turned slow. The others followed, one by one, each leaving a deeper print in the road than the last. Before the last man rode off, he leaned down toward Ruth. "You know what he is." She didn't blink. "So do you." The man spit near her feet. "Then may God help you both." They rode off. Dust rose behind them like the road itself was ashamed. Ruth waited until they disappeared beyond the ridge before she turned. Tom hadn't moved. She touched his shoulder. "You all right?" He didn't look at her. "What did you hear?" He mouthed, "Enough." She studied him. "You scared?" He didn't answer. "You should be." He finally looked at her. His eyes weren't afraid. "Not anymore." She stepped back. "That's what I'm scared of." He picked up the stick from under the porch bench, wrote in the dirt near her feet. "They know." She nodded. He added another word. "Afraid." "Of you." He shrugged. She wiped the dirt smooth with her boot. "You didn't do anything wrong." He tapped his chest. "Still wrong." She stared at him. "They don't want justice. They want quiet." He met her eyes. "I'm not quiet anymore." She whispered, "I see that." They stood there a while, wind picking at their hair. The barn creaked behind them. The air felt colder than the morning allowed. Finally, she said, "Come on." He didn't move. "Come inside." He pointed toward the woods. "They'll come back." She nodded. "I know." "When?" "When we start to feel safe." He signed something shaky. "I won't run." She placed her hand over his. "I know." Inside, the fire still burned steadily, but when he sat beside it, the light on his face didn't look warm. It looked like something waiting. The axe hadn't been touched in months. Rust along the blade, handle dry and splintered near the grip. Ruth pulled it from behind the shed, thumbed the edge, and gave it a testing swing into air. "He never showed me how," she muttered. Tom stood a few feet away, watching. He dragged the logs from the stack without being asked. 4 thick rounds sat lined on the block. She raised the axe again, lowered it, then offered it to him. "Do you want to swing first?" He looked from her to the block, nodded, took it slow. The axe was heavy in his hands, but he didn't hesitate. One clean strike, thwack, split the first log without needing a second. She blinked. "Well." He adjusted his grip, set the next one. "Stronger than you look," she said. He didn't respond, just raised the axe again and brought it down. Another clean break. She crossed her arms. "Have you done this before?" He paused, looked over, then signed something. "Rough. Work camp." She didn't ask more. He kept going. Wood split clean under each swing. No wasted movement. She said, "He made me watch. Said I'd slow him down." Tom looked at her, eyes calm, wiped sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. She stepped closer, took the axe from him. "My turn." She raised it, brought it down hard, missed the center. Tom didn't laugh. She reset the log. "I tried again. This time it split, but jagged." He nodded once, stepped beside her, took her hands in his, adjusted the grip. She tensed. He backed off quickly. "No," she said. "It's fine." She looked down at her hands wrapped around the wood, then swung. "Clean this time." She exhaled. He signed again. "Good." She half smiled. "Took long enough." They kept at it, trading swings. He didn't rush. She didn't try to impress. The rhythm settled between them. Split, stack, breathe. She muttered, "Funny what feels holy when you've bled for less." He didn't understand the words, but he caught the tone. "You think this makes us family?" He shrugged. She wiped her hands on her apron. "Could be." He picked up a new log, raised the axe. Before swinging, he signed, "I will." She frowned. "Will what?" He signed again, clearer. "Teach you." She stared at him, then nodded once. "Then you already are." They worked until the sun tipped past the trees, stacked the last of it under the porch awning. She said, "That's more wood than I've had in 2 winters." He tapped his chest, proud. She didn't mock it, didn't undercut, just said, "Feels earned." He looked at her. "You trust me now?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "Yeah, I do." He breathed out. Not a smile, but something softer. Inside, she set the fire herself, used 2 pieces he'd split. They caught fast. Tom watched from the rug, arms crossed, blanket near but unused. She said, "Have you ever had a night that felt like it paid for itself?" He looked into the flames, then signed, "This one." She stirred the coals. Same. Silence fell, but it didn't weigh like before. She leaned back in her chair. "He used to say some people come to take your food, others come to make you hungrier." Tom frowned. She added, "You're neither." He pointed to the saddle still resting in the corner. She said, "It's waiting on you." He tapped the floor. "Tomorrow." "Fair." She shifted. "What did they make you split in that camp?" He hesitated, then signed, "More than wood." She whispered, "That's what I thought." He looked at her hands, then asked, "Have you ever hit him?" She stared into the fire. "No." "Why not?" she said. "Because I didn't want to become the kind of woman who could." He wrote slowly in the ash. "But you wanted to?" "Yes." He erased the word. The fire danced between them, louder now. She looked at him, softer. "Do you ever want to stop running?" He nodded. "You think this place can hold you?" He shrugged. She said, "We'll find out." They watched the wood burn down together, piece by piece, what they'd made with their hands now keeping them alive. The saddle had sat quiet for 3 days, half-stitched, half-waiting. Tom hadn't touched it since they'd finished stacking the last of the wood. Ruth hadn't pushed. This morning, she moved it to the table herself. Run a finger along the leather. Clean work. Too clean. She picked up a curved blade, traced the seam along the cantle. It gave too easily. The lining lifted where it shouldn't have. Inside, stuffed beneath the padding, folded into itself. Paper, sealed with red wax. She frowned, rubbed at the seal with her thumb. A star pressed in the center. Sheriff's mark. She unfolded it slowly. Creases stiff. The ink hadn't faded. Her husband's name scrawled at the bottom. She read it once, then again. She didn't make a sound. Tom stepped into the doorway, paused, saw the letter. I saw her face. She didn't look up, just walked to the hearth, threw it in. The paper curled, hissed, blackened in one breath. Tom stared at the flames, eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, reached for his stick, wrote in the ash by her boot. "Traitor?" She shook her head. "Worse." He tilted his head. She whispered, "Coward." He crossed it out. "Yours." She nodded. "Was." He waited. She said, "He took money to tell them who ran, where they hid. Women. Boys like you." Tom stiffened. She added, "Said it wasn't about hurting them. Just information. Said the sheriff paid more than the horses ever did." Tom's jaw tightened. She dropped the fire poker, let it clang against the brick. He signed, "Did you know?" "No." He pointed to the saddle. "But you touched it." "I never looked inside. I never thought I had to." He didn't write again. She walked past him, stopped at the sink, ran cold water over her hands. He was good with tools, bad with truth. Tom sat near the fire, cross-legged. I watched the paper turn to ash. She joined him. I thought he was tired. That's why he never finished it. But maybe he just couldn't face it. He wrote, "What happens now?" "I keep stitching." He signed, "Me too." She met his eyes. "Only if you want to." He nodded once. She said, "The sheriff paid him to make things disappear." He frowned. She clarified, "Not kill, just appoint." And looked the other way. Tom stared at the flames. She asked, "You think that makes me guilty too?" He didn't respond. She said, "I slept next to that man for 12 years. Still nothing." She leaned forward. "You want to call him a traitor, do it, but don't put it on me." Tom looked at her, then signed, slow. "I'm still here." She exhaled, sat back. He wrote in the ash again. "Widow?" She whispered. "Yes." He wiped it clean. They sat in silence, firelight shifting across their faces. She said, "He used to oil the leather every Sunday. Said it made things last longer." Tom nodded. She added, "Turns out some things rot no matter how much you tend them." He didn't write again. She looked at the ash in the hearth. "That letter could have ruined me." He pointed. "It still can." "No," she said. "Now it's just gone." Tom picked up the saddle again. Turn it gently. Checked her cut. Searched for more. She asked, "You think there's more hiding in there?" He shrugged. "Men like him always hide twice." She smiled, bitter. "You're not wrong." She leaned forward. "You want to finish it?" He nodded. "You sure?" He picked up the needle, threaded it, signed without looking. "I finished what he couldn't," she whispered. "Then it's yours." They weren't looking for anything when they found it, just walking past the ridge where the fence dipped low and the trees grew tight together. Ruth had brought Tom out to check the traps. Morning sun, quiet air, the kind of calm that never lasted. Tom stopped. First, his hand went to her arm, fast. She turned, saw where he pointed. The tree stood crooked, thick-trunked, bark split wide in the middle, rope marks deep, fresh. She stepped forward, touched the groove, still frayed bark. The impression is not old enough to forget. Tom stared hard, didn't move. She whispered, "This wasn't here last week." He shook his head. "Anyone nearby?" He tilted his ear. Nothing. Then, twigs. Crunching. Closer than safe. She grabbed his wrist. "Back to the fence. Quiet." He hesitated. "Now." They moved fast, but not fast enough. A voice rang out behind them. "You looking for something, widow?" She froze. Two men stepped out from behind the brush. One she knew. Sheriff's hand, thick shoulders, mean eyes. The other, younger, twitchy, chewing something that wasn't food. The older one grinned. "Didn't know you liked morning walks," she said. "Didn't know you patrolled trees." He looked at Tom. "He's supposed to be out here." Tom didn't answer. Ruth stepped in front of him. "We're checking traps." The twitchy one chuckled. "Not many traps on a hanging tree." Her voice dropped. "Is that what it is?" "Could be." She narrowed her eyes. "For who?" The older one spit. "Strays, runaways, liars." Tom's hands balled into fists. The man pointed. "Like that one." She stepped closer. "You touch him, I'll put you under that tree myself." He smiled wide. "You'll try." He took a step forward. Ruth raised her voice. "You know what happens if you fail." He said, "We don't." The twitchy one added, "We're really good at knots." Tom signed behind her back. "They'll hang you too." She whispered, "Then they better pull tight." The older man flinched, just enough to show it. "You talk big for a woman alone." "I'm not alone." Tom stepped beside her. The man frowned. "You think that boy can save you?" She said, "I think he's the reason I don't need saving." The younger one shifted. "Sheriff ain't gonna like this." "He never does," she muttered. The older man reached for something at his belt. Not a gun. Rope. She backed up. "Don't." He kept walking. "You make one more move," she said, "and we'll see how fast you bleed." He laughed. You're threatening me with what? She pulled her coat back. Knife handle. Worn. Visible. I don't miss, she said. He paused. Are you sure about that? He asked. She nodded. You? He hesitated. Then behind them, another sound. Hoofbeats. Fast. Close. The men turned. She grabbed Tom's hand. Run. They didn't look back. Branches snapped around them, thorns catching sleeves. Tom stayed close, matching her pace. They didn't speak. No breath to waste. Firelight shimmered in the distance. Home. Close enough to feel it. Tom stumbled once. She caught him. Pulled him. Upright. Keep going, she gasped. You're almost there. The porch creaked as they hit the steps. She kicked the door open, shoved him through, slammed it shut behind them. Lock, latch, bolt. She dropped to her knees, breath burning in her chest. Tom leaned against the wall, sweat on his face, eyes wild. She crawled to the hearth, threw in wood with shaking hands. The fire caught fast. She turned to him. Are you hurt? He shook his head. Did they follow? He listened, waited, then signed. Number not yet. She leaned against the rocker. They tied someone to that tree. He nodded. Recently. Yes. She whispered, was it meant for you? He didn't answer. Then, maybe both of us. She said nothing. The fire popped. Sparks jumped. He rode in the soot on the hearth. Why now? She whispered, because we stopped running. He stared at the flames. They still don't want us. She nodded. Still people don't forget. He looked at her, then signed slowly. You're not scared. I am. You didn't act like it. I've been scared longer than you've been alive, she said. I just got better at hiding it. He tapped the floor. They'll come again. I know. Soon. I know. He hesitated. You'll still fight? She said. Until my last breath. He stared at the rope burn on her sleeve from the tree, raised his hand. Me too. She nodded. Then let's keep the fire fed. The wind outside screamed all night, but inside the fire never went out. Tom sat closest, legs folded, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the flames like they were speaking only to him. Ruth sat behind, rocking slowly, blade across her lap. The rope mark on her sleeve hadn't faded. She watched him. He hadn't blinked in minutes. You all right? She asked. He didn't answer. Tom. He raised his hands fast, signed sharp. Fire hears, fire answers. She froze. What? He turned to her, eyes wide, fierce. He repeated it, slower. Fire hears, fire answers. She stared at the blaze. What kind of memory? He shook his head. Truth. Who told you that? He didn't move. Tom. He tapped his chest. I heard it, she whispered. You said you couldn't hear. Not with ears. She leaned forward. What did it say? He didn't sign, just stared into the flame, breath shallow. Tom. He reached out with both hands, stretched them toward the fire. No, she said. You'll burn. But he didn't touch it, just hovered there, palms trembling. Then the smoke shifted, not sharp or fast, just a curl, a pull. Shapes rose, not faces at first, just outlines, blurs. But then they came clear. Eyes, mouths, grief pulled wide across each one. He mouthed words she couldn't hear, then signed. Names. What names? The ones they took. She watched the smoke bend again. Another shape. A girl with a red scarf. A man. Missing teeth. A boy holding something that looked like a chain. More smoke. Another face. Ruth's breath caught. The eyes. Narrow. The line of the jaw. The curl of the lip like it was always about to curse. Her husband. She whispered, no. The shape didn't move, just hung in the haze. Tom's hands dropped, smoke scattered. She stood, backed away from the hearth. That wasn't real. He watched her, silent. Don't look at me like that. He didn't move. She said, he's dead. Tom signed slowly. Not gone. He doesn't belong in this house. He built it. She flinched. He added. He buried secrets in the walls. Fire knows. She turned to the hearth, furious. That fire burned the letter. Tom nodded. It keeps what we give it, but it gives back. She stared at the coals. Flickers danced like breath across them. He signed again. They're waiting. All of them. For what? He hesitated. Then, truth. She sat down hard on the rocker. What do they want from me? He looked at her. To remember. I remember everything. Number you survive everything. Not the same. She shook her head. I didn't choose to forget. But you did. She stood fast. You don't know me. He looked down, wrote slowly in the ash. I know silence. I know shame. She stepped closer. You think I'm ashamed? Of what you didn't stop. She stared at him, breath ragged. I was his wife, not his judge. He wrote again. You were the last one to see him. She said nothing. Before he vanished, she turned away. The fire popped again. A small burst. Sparks leapt, caught the edge of her skirt. She stamped it out. He whispered, He told me you'd come. She froze. What? He signed it. He told me. At the camp. Before he disappeared, her throat tightened. That's not possible. Tom nodded. He said, She'll see the smoke when it's ready. Ruth stared at the flames. Why now? Because we stayed. She said, Then we should have run. He shook his head. That's what he did. She stepped back toward the fire. It hissed. Her voice cracked. I didn't kill him. Tom didn't accuse. I didn't write. Just wait, she whispered, but I let the fire take him. He nodded once. Then it knows you too. Her knees gave. She sank to the floor, face to the glow, breath close to sobbing, but never tipping over. He crawled beside her. She said, I was tired of his voice, of the lies, the way he looked at me like I owed him silence. He placed his hand on hers. Steady, she whispered. I fed the fire to his coat, his tools, the saddle plans. But I never buried him. Because you knew he wasn't done. She looked at Tom. He added, But he is now. How do you know? He pointed at the flame. It bent low, then rose once, and stayed still. The door slammed open hard enough to shake the window glass. Ruth didn't stand. She just looked up. The sheriff stood in the doorway, gun raised, dust on his boots, face twisted with something older than rage. Where is he? Tom didn't move. Bring him out, the sheriff shouted. Now! Ruth stayed seated in the rocking chair, fire crackling beside her. You can't stop what's coming, the sheriff growled. I don't plan to, she said. He stepped in, gun steady. He's a danger. You think I don't know what he is? What has he seen? Tom stood near the hearth, still barefoot, still quiet. His hand gripped her sleeve. The sheriff turned to him. I said, come here. Tom didn't flinch. The gun clicked louder. I said, Ruth stood. He's not going anywhere. Then you'll both burn. You tried that already, she said. Didn't take. The sheriff stepped forward. Tom didn't run. He pulled her gently, guiding her to the hearth. His hands were calm. The fire behind them roared higher. Smoke began to rise. Not like before. Thicker, darker. It climbed the walls, curved toward the sheriff. What the hell? Chains clinked from somewhere unseen. Then a voice, low, not quite human, a groan of breath that turned to names. Dozens, then hundreds. Ruth covered her ears. Tom stood still. The sheriff's eyes widened. He backed up, waving the gun blindly. Stop this! Tom raised one hand. Not to attack, just to point out. The smoke curled around the sheriff's boots. Then higher. He choked, coughed, dropped the gun. Ruth said, He's not your problem anymore. I made him. The sheriff gasped. No, she said. You burned him. The voices rose louder. Women, children, men, all screaming over each other, not in fear, but fury. The sheriff dropped to his knees, hands on his throat. Ruth didn't move. Tom didn't blink. The smoke filled the room like a storm with memory in its lungs. Then, silence. The sheriff collapsed face first onto the floor. The gun beside him, his eyes open, chest still. The smoke drifted back into the hearth like it had done its job. Tom stepped forward, touched the fire with one finger, not in, just near. The flame calmed. The air cleared. Ruth walked over slowly. I looked down at the body, then turned away. He's safe, she whispered. Tom looked up at her. Me? She nodded. You? He asked. You sure? She sat back down in the chair. He's not breathing. Tom picked up the sheriff's gun, unloaded it, dropped the shells in the ash pan. She whispered, Good. He came to her. I stood beside the rocker. She reached out, gripped his hand. The chair rocked once, then stopped. No creak, no sway, no echo. Stillness settled around them like a door closing. She leaned back. That chair's never stopped moving. Not since he died. Tom signed. Now it has. She nodded. The fire glowed steadily. Not roaring, just warm. She said, "You want to bury him?" Tom looked at the body. Number, let the fire remember. She closed her eyes. Fine. They didn't speak again for a while. The flames danced soft across the floorboards. Ruth exhaled slowly. "You're safe now," she said again. Tom squeezed her hand once, then let go.